Okay, so we left off talking about active transport and passive transport. Passive requires no energy, goes from high to low like a rock rolling down a hill. You don't need to push it. Active goes from low concentration to a high concentration like a rock that you're pushing up the hill. It requires a lot of energy. You have to push it up. All right, so today in this video, we're going to talk about a specific type of diffusion. Whenever it is water that is going from a high concentration to a low concentration across a membrane, it is called osmosis. And osmosis is particularly important to a cell because water is very important to a cell, and it also can create pressure inside. And as we mentioned in the last video, it can cause a cell to explode. So it can have huge ramifications for the cell's life. Okay, so sometimes water will diffuse in, like we talked about with the amoeba. Here's a plant cell. 100% water out here, 80% water in here. Which way is the water going to go, in or out? In this case, the water is going to diffuse in. Now, if this was an amoeba, exploding amoeba. But the plant cell has a wonderful organelle that is going to keep it from exploding. And that is this structure on the outside of the cell membrane. So this oval is the cell membrane. What is the structure on the outside of that? The cell wall. And what's going to happen is the water is going to diffuse in, and it's going to increase the pressure in here and push out the cell membrane against the cell wall. But it won't explode, and we say that it has high osmotic pressure. And that's actually what will keep cells rigid. It allows plants to stand up without a skeleton. It's a wonderful thing, and it just increases the pressure inside as the water keeps diffusing in. Animal cells will explode. So that's osmosis, the diffusion of water across the membrane. Passive transport from high to low, still from high to low. Okay, so we're going to take a look at a couple of scenarios here. Now, I want you to imagine a beaker, and that orange thing is the cell. Okay, and the cell is 90% water. Okay, 10% other things dissolved in it. And let's say we put it in a beaker of water, and we add enough salt to make it 50% salt, 50% water. Which way will the water diffuse, into or out of the cell? Well, if the cell is 90% and the water around it is 50%, then the water is going to go from high to low, and it's going to diffuse out, right? Now, let's say instead we drop our cell into water, but we only add a tiny amount of salt, 1% salt. Well, if it's 1% salt, how much water is that going to be? It's going to be 99% water. So let's say it's 99% water out here, and it's still 90% water in the cell. Which way will the water go? It will go from high to low, and it will go into the cell, and the water will diffuse in. And the cell, if it doesn't have a cell wall, will explode. Okay, now let's say we have a cell, and we put it in water, but we make sure that there's 10% salt in there. Now, if it's 10% salt, that means it's what percent water? 90%. And so what's going to happen? We're going to have equal amounts going in and out. We would say this cell is at equilibrium, and you're not going to have any more molecules moving in than out. And I want you to get an idea here of what's happening is you can change the concentration of water by changing the amount of salt or sugar that you dissolve in it. So if you want to make a cell explode, drop it in 100% pure water, also known as distilled water. If you want to make it shrivel, just put a whole lot of salt around it in the water. You add a ton of salt to that water, and what you're really doing is making the water concentration low. That's right, by adding salt to the water in the beaker, you are dropping the concentration of water, and you can make it lower than the cell, and the water will diffuse out, and the cell will shrivel up. If you want to keep cells alive in solution, you need to make sure to make the right concentration of salts so that the concentration of water is equal to what is in the cell. And that is osmosis.